Hello and welcome back to the Ambassadors of Gaming. I'm one in your army of hosts, Ambassador Michael, and today I want to discuss the first game of 2020 that we are reviewing, Dragonball Z Kakarot. A little bit prior to this, I will say that off the bat, I am pretty biased. Dragon Ball is one of my favorite series, and so I've played a lot of the games. There have been a lot of really bad ones, there have been a lot of really good ones, and when this was originally announced as an RPG and kind of going back through the series, I was really excited because we haven't had something like that in a very long time. The closest thing I can recall off the top of my memory are the Game Boy Advance Legacy of Goku games. And I guess in hindsight, I was scrolling through some things and I guess those were critically panned as well, which is funny to me because I actually really enjoy those memories, my memories of those games. I went back and played some of them through emulation over the years, and I still think they hold up fairly well. But anyways, I was hoping that would be kind of the premise of this game, a more RPG-like factor, and more or less it is. There's elements where you have to collect orbs to upgrade your power levels, there's skill trees, there's a kind of a party system. Not what you typically see in RPGs where it's customizable, at least not in the very beginning where I'm at. It's much more expansive than most of the games I've played, Dragon Ball related. Even Xenoverse, because Xenoverse was the most expanded I had seen at the time, but it still was very much like, we're going to hit these story beats, the main story beats of Dragon Ball Z, and kind of shoehorn in some of our own stuff in between them. Whereas this game really focuses more like the anime and kind of fills in the gaps of a lot of stuff with filler and stuff that if you had watched the show you're kind of familiar with. And so it's got a very anime-like feel to it. It's obvious to me that they kind of approach it the same way that Bandai's been approaching some of these bigger open world games like One Piece and Naruto as well. So, and from the fan bases that I've seen, those games kind of reflected fairly well what they were anticipating for it, and kind of a reflection of the show. And so, to me, that's what I cared about. Was the game an accurate reflection of the show, first and foremost? Secondly, is it actually enjoyable to play? And I think it does both of those things in my time with it. If you're unfamiliar with Dragon Ball, it's broken up just like most animes into sagas, which are broken up based on usually the villain. So I've completed the first saga in Dragon Ball Z for the most part. They have these intermissions in between sagas, and right now I'm in the first intermission in between sagas. And I just think it's well designed. The submissions are a little wonky. They're a little vague. They don't always tell you where to go and what to do. That's my one major complaint outside of the orb system. I don't like the orb system at all, which is the primary way you go about upgrading. Now, if the orb system is entirely based on whether or not you want to go around and collect a bunch of orbs, get them through combat, fighting enemies in the open world, which you can do, which usually yields you more, but it depends, because sometimes you gain a lot and sometimes you don't. So it's very dependent on kind of how it's programmed, what your best course of action is, so that when you go into an area for the first time in a current area in a section, you want to kind of check it out and see how much enemies are going to give you, and also each character has different requirements. So some require red orbs, some require blue, some require green. There's a combination of them, and they also require these like ambiguous multicolored orbs, which are much harder to find. So that's the only real complaint I have of it. The big thing I've seen from other reviews and impressions of the game is that the combat is stale and boring. I don't think that's the case. I think it's really designed to, first of all, it emulates the characters really well. So their movesets and kind of how you want to function with them is emulated really well. So you have to play each character kind of differently, but you can still kind of adapt your playstyle. So if you want to have a far-reaching and all you want to do is shoot ki blasts and energy blasts, and you don't actually want to punch them at all, you can do that. It's not very fun, but you can do it. versus I like to make a combination of those things. I kind of like to get in close, get in some hits, use a combo attack, kind of combo that off, hit him afar, hit him with an energy beam, and that's kind of my play style, and kind of mixing up those two hand to hand, and then the energy blast, at least early on in the game. So combat I actually enjoy. When I have to fight random enemies, it seems kind of weird. They also have this weird like instant kill, which I think is for enemies that are super low level from you. So if you're in an area with super low level and you're flying really fast and you run directly into them, you'll just kill them instantly, which is kind of cool because it's like I don't really want to spend my time like fighting 4 or 5 low level enemies. I just want to get to where I'm going. And so I'm glad that they thought of that. I think that again shows kind of the idea behind the level design here. The maps are gigantic. They're huge, and there's multiple of them. Just on the first section alone, I think there's like 6 or 7 areas. And they're really, really big because they're meant to be traversed in between points of interest. So like most RPGs, they're large, but you fly in between your points of interest. But if you really wanted to run across the whole map or walk across the whole map, you could. It would just take you forever. So it's detailed. There's not a lot of there's purpose behind where stuff is. So in between where your points of interest are, you can collect materials, minerals, herbs, food, ingredients to cook with, and then you can collect the orbs, fight enemies, stuff like that. So it's not like you're just flying about and the world's empty. There's stuff in between each area and things for you to do. The control scheme is really, really bad, and the tutorials are really bad. That's one of my other major complaints with the game, is that the tutorials throw a lot of information at you all at once. Like the first 20 minutes of the game, there's just, I don't know, like 15, 20 screens of tutorials. It's absurd. There's so many of them. And they're all very, like the control scheme is super weird. Like you have to hold right trigger and then to move up and down vertically in fights, which is just weird. Typically, I've talked about this with other people in AOG and Fanboys of Gaming and the group we're a part of. Punch is typically on the left facing button, so square or X. But in Kakarot, it's B or circle, which is kind of off-putting. A is dodge, which I like a lot. Guard is left trigger, which is kind of weird. So it's just dependent on... It's all not that complicated once you get used to it, and because the control scheme stays on screen, which I think is really good because they lay out the hub really, or the HUD really well. There's not a lot of space in the HUD or during combat where stuff is being taken up. You have a lot of space there, and so having those the control scheme is super important, and that just stays there the whole game. I think it goes away after a while. But if you like land or something, I think you can bring it up when you bring up the HUD. I'm not really sure off the top of my head. When you're seeing the clips, you'll see what I'm talking about. I don't recall it being there, but if it is there, then I'm so tunnel visioned as to what's going around directly in the center of the screen. I'm not even noticing it personally. So, I know, like, I guess this is gonna go back on a lot of what other people are saying, but for me, this game is what I anticipated it being, and kind of what I was hoping it would be. But I've also followed Bandai pretty closely over the last couple of years. We do Ambassadors, we do Games Embassy, so I kind of have a feel of what kind of games they're putting out and how they're going about it. I also saw a couple of things video-wise before I bought it, but either way, I was gonna buy it ever since that first reveal trailer. So it's gorgeous. I think it plays really well. It allows you to have a lot of adaptability in your playstyle. If it's boring for you, try different combat styles before you just say the game is boring. And then if you've tried those combat styles and you still think it's boring, then I think that's a fair criticism to make. I just think you should at least give it a try first. So, yeah, the orbs suck. I hate them. But pretty much everything else in the game I find to be helpful and useful. The community boards, the management of the RPG system sounds really overwhelming at first, but it's really not. The community boards are like these little boosts. The RPG elements, they give you little boosts and stat upgrades to your characters and help you find better items and cook better meals to get better stat boosts and stuff like that. So overall, I think they did a great job with this game. I think it's the first pretty good game of 2020. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a Game of the Year contender, but it's a game I enjoy very much. From a franchise I enjoy very much. And while it's not exactly what I anticipated or wanted, like in the concept of Legacy of Goku, it's about as close as I'm probably going to get in this day and age, and I'm okay with that. So that's kind of my impressions, my first impressions and reviews. I'm actually going to play more to capture the footage that you're seeing now. So if I have anything to add on, I will, but I think I've pretty succinctly put my thoughts together. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Please let us know what you're thinking about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. It seems to be a bit of a divisive game starting off the year. So I would love to hear what you think, whether or not you've bought it, whether or not this video has convinced you whether or not it's worthwhile for you to purchase. We always want to know what you guys are thinking, what you're feeling, what you're playing. If not, tell us what you've been playing and why you think people should be playing that. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, friends, I'm Ambassador Michael. I have a few screenshots for you, not as many as Daryl, so enjoy. Goodbye.